Welcome to Frugal Finance. My name is Matthew, and today we're going to look at a particular development that Norman here has purchased. It's basically a pub that he's converted into flats, and so we're going to have a look at the figures on that and the breakdown and quite what brought Norman to purchase that. But before we do that, a little bit about Norman's company. So he's from Sussex Signs, and he makes signs essentially. But
Absolutely,
I'll tell you about what you do for
that's
the
what
audience.
we do. So the day job's sign maker, and we do vehicles, signage, premises signage, shop signage, everything like that.
Yeah.
And that's how I sort of like earn my day living, as it were, and paying my own mortgage.
Yeah, indeed. So you've probably seen our Mini that we've got for Charles Cox. Obviously, those who watch regularly, you know I run a management company. So Norman wrapped our vehicles. So he does everything from shop signage all the way through to t-shirts and wrapping vehicles and stuff. So yeah, he's your man. And what's your website? It's just
Sussexsigns.com.
Well, there you go, nice and simple.
Cool.
So if you any sign needs in the kind of southeast, or you go up to London and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
we do London home counties and Sussex and South East.
Okay, so there you go. Any signage needs,
Absolutely.
Norman's your man. So this is a pub. I remember it when I was a kid, to be honest. I probably shouldn't have been drinking in there, but I do remember sneaking in there and getting a pint. Probably some shandy or something. But and from memory, you may know better than me, it was converted probably in the mid-2000s or something?
2005 it was converted.
Yeah, okay.
So it's been 16 years ago, the original conversion. It was taken from obviously the pub, and then they converted it into 5 flats.
Right, okay. And presumably that kind of era for some of the younger audience would be just before the financial crash of sort of 2008. So do you know what the original developer's plan was with it? Was that who you bought it from? Or?
I bought it from the original developer. Yeah. I think he bought it to develop it and invest in it, and then obviously he's had it for 15 years, 16 years, and I think he wanted to retire because we all get old.
Right, okay. So one of the things I know from Norman previously, when we've talked about it, is that each of the flats has got a lease on it. For those of you outside the UK, basically all property in the United Kingdom has to have, you can't have vertical freehold, so you can't have like a plot of land with several freehold titles on it. So we have this thing called leasehold. They call it common hold in Europe normally, for those European viewers. But basically, normally what happens when someone buys a site and develops it and keeps it, they don't issue leases on them because they don't need to.
Yeah.
But I understand one of the benefits, probably for the timing, might have been the developer might have wanted to have sold it and then the financial crash came on, because it's quite unusual that they would actually all have leases on them.
Yeah, they were built originally and they all had 125-year leases.
Yeah.
And then out of that, they had the overarching freehold.
Yeah.
And what we've done is we've bought the overarching freehold in another entity, and the individual leaseholds in a limited company.
Yeah, which is really quite good from your point of view, because quite often with these kind of conversions or new builds, the freeholder won't actually separate the whole thing out, because if they keep them, you'll find that the leasehold properties don't actually have leases on them because they don't need to, because they own it already anyway. It's only when you sell it, and from a mortgage provider, they will insist that you have a lease on it.
Yeah.
So, which presumably from yourself, you would have got a mortgage on these properties, so that's really beneficial in that sense.
And we haven't just got a mortgage on the property; we've got 5 mortgages on. So we've got 5 separate mortgages on each flat.
Yeah.
On 5 separate mortgages on 5 separate flats. So if ever we needed to sell one of the flats, we could,
sell that.
and they could either own part of the freehold, or we could set up a management company, or use yourself to run to run the whole block, and then manage the block for us as part of the limited company.
So that's a really good in terms of from Norman's point of view from purchasing the property. Because as I said before, quite often you find that people will build stuff or convert flats, and they won't put individual leases on. I actually was involved in one in Peacehaven. You probably know it. It's the Pine Shop which is
no.
So anyone want to Google that? It's in Peacehaven called the Pine Shop, but that's a very similar building. It's about 4 flats and a commercial unit, but the freeholder had not issued individual leases on all of the properties because they own the property. Why would they spend the money with a solicitor drawing up a lease and so on? So when I came to buy it, one of the problems is I couldn't get mortgages on either the whole freehold title or the individual leasehold titles, traditional buy-to-let mortgages that is. There was alternative financing because they didn't have all the leases. So that's quite an unusual situation for someone to own the whole building and have those leases in place. So yeah, really good buy for that. So anybody that's looking at doing those kind of things, you should really look out to make sure that that's in place to start with, or you should be asking the seller that will they put the individual leases
It was the criteria. I wouldn't have done it without it.
Exactly, yeah. And how did you come across it?
Well,
is it not like kind of normally not on Rightmove?
No, well, I'm a bit of a Rightmove ferret, if you like. Yeah. So I've always got an eye on Rightmove, and over the years, for different deals I've done, you sort of like get a sniff, and you sort of like know. And I know the Newfield because I used to also drink in there in a misspent youth, and I knew that it was obviously a block of flats now. And I saw one of the flats on Rightmove, and then a couple of days later I had another look on Rightmove, and I saw another flat on Rightmove. Yeah. And I noticed it was in the same block, so I gave the agent a ring, and I said, I'm just sort of inquiring about these 2 flats you've got. Are they at the Newfield? And they went, yeah. I said, is there any other flats there? And then they said, yeah, well, he's looking to actually offload all of them, but we're putting them on slowly but surely. Yeah. So I said, well, how about if we manage to do a deal for the whole block and all 5? And so I said, well, he'd be interested in it as long as it was the right money. Yeah. So his right money and my right money are obviously different right monies. Yeah. So I went and had a look. I looked at all 5 flats and looked at what he wanted individually. Yeah. So I then came up with an idea of what I'd be prepared to pay, how it stacked up with everything, because I knew that I'd have to buy it through a limited company because of the way the tax is now.
So Section 24 tax is what you're trying to avoid, which links in the description below. There's previous videos I've done on that, so obviously setting up your own company and the benefits of that.
Yeah, so basically it had to be done through a limited company, otherwise we'd be paying too much tax and it wouldn't be cost effective, which also means that because you're buying through a limited company, you're paying a couple of % interest extra than you would under a normal buy-to-let. Yeah. So therefore it had to be a good deal. Yeah. And I've always thought that you make your money in property when you buy rather than when you sell. Yeah. So you make it on the original deal, and then obviously when you come to sell it, it's great. So I made an offer that was rejected, and then they thought about it, and about a week and a half later came back and said, actually, if you buy all 5, it's going to save us a lot of hassle, and we'll take the deal. So it was good.
So that's really interesting, and I suppose what the audience really want to know is what were the figures behind it? How did you conclude? You've said you made them an offer, and it was rejected to start with, and this goes to show that below market deals, as you mentioned, making your money when you buy, they don't have to necessarily be kind of at the auctions or doing leaflet drops everywhere. This was quite a straightforward one that you sort of found on Rightmove and then tapped up the agent.
The thing is, you need to be prepared to walk away. That's the first thing whenever you do a deal. So you have to be prepared to walk away. I'm very happy to walk away. Yeah. You also need to make sure that when you've got a figure in your mind, you're not going to be bullied into increasing it just because somebody says it's worth more. Yeah. So I had a figure in my mind that I wanted to pay, obviously like a deal, and I also worked out what I thought the property was worth. I wanted to get it about £150,000 less than market value. And I figured that if I got it for about £150,000 less than market value, then the grief that it's going to cause me as a block of 5 flats would be well worth it. Yes. Because the idea is that eventually then you either sell it or it moves down into the family, and then it becomes sort of like a real asset.
Yeah, definitely. And you own the freehold title for the land as well.
Own the freehold title for the land, so that potentially there's a basement there, and we can potentially move into the basement. The basement had planning permission for a 2-bedroom flat. That's lapsed, but obviously that doesn't mean that we wouldn't get it again. There's no reason why we wouldn't get it again. And obviously there's the issues of building into a basement, which can be problematic. So it wouldn't be cheap.
Why they didn't do it.
Which is probably why they didn't do it. And bearing in mind that they did the conversion in 2005. 3 years later, when they were probably looking to do the conversion down into the basement, there wasn't any money. Because lenders weren't lending any money back in 2008, 2009.
Financial crisis.
And then they've probably decided not to do it. What they did do is they built in the car park. So they made their money that way.
Okay, fine.
So I'm sure the ex developers have done quite well out of this.
Indeed. I mean, drinking culture in the UK is kind of not waned. I suppose waned is the right word a little bit.
People drink at home now, don't they? On Friday and Saturday night, I'll go out for Sunday lunches.
And that's before COVID, because we have an awful lot of pubs converted into convenience stores with flats above, that kind of thing. So you're right, the developer would have done quite well out of it. It's unusual that there's further development potential. Obviously, it might have been cost prohibitive at the time, but that's quite good, because normally those sort of pub buildings in the UK don't really lend themselves to extensions or building on roofs and things like that, because they tend to be older, sort of 18th century style buildings.
The pub's quite a pretty pub. It's got a nice turret. It's well maintained. It looks nice. It's been looked after. So the developers have actually looked after it very well. That was another reason why I thought I'd buy it. The basement lends itself to a potential 2-bedroom flat. Obviously, I've done quite a lot of money purchasing this, so I haven't got lots of money tucked away ready to just go straight into developing it. So I'm thinking, when I've got a 5-year fixed rate mortgage on it, so I'm thinking in 5 years time, when it's time to sort of like get it redone, get it all properly revalued, get the mortgage done, and the money we take out of the 5 new properties, that will then develop the basement. So then
there's a
5 will become 6.
So as you mentioned before, making your money when you buy, the future plan is to then release that money to fund that basement thing, so you're not having to fund that.
It doesn't cost you anything, and you've ended up with 6 properties instead of 5.
Brilliant idea, and fixed for 5 years, as we all probably know. Inflation is on the horizon. Even if it's transitory and it goes away and settles back down again, a lot of people are doing 5-year fixed.
If inflation's still at 6% in 5 years' time, we're all in trouble.
Yes, indeed.
So let's just hope that doesn't happen.
So I think that's really good. So we're talking. I'm hazarding a guess. We're kind of original purchaser. The seller wanted to get a figure of maybe like sort of 750, 700, and you're going in there at kind of 650, 600 or something.
I think if you add up all the properties and what they're worth, what they're currently worth now is probably 850,000 if you added them all up together. I pitched it in at, I thought they were probably worth between sort of 775 and 800,000. Because I was looking back 6-7 months ago when we bought it, and I made an offer in at 650.
And it's a pretty good offer.
Then we broke it down, and we got 1 2-bedroom flat in there, and we got 4 1-bedroom flats, and they were each valued separately to make up the 650. But essentially that's what we've got. And in New Haven, which is obviously where the development is, the cheapest 1-bedroom flat at the moment is between sort of 150 and 160 at the moment. And if you add those up, the cheapest 2-bedroom flat is looking at 180. So you're looking at 160 times 4. That's 320. 640. And then
plus 180.
Plus 180
is 820.
820. So it's valued now approximately.
We'll check that on the maths when I edit it. But 820, give or take.
820 give or take, cost 650, so that's sort of 170. And obviously there's costs. There's all the costs of the solicitor's fees. There's the stamp duty. So you take all that out now, and that's why you need to get it at the right price.
And presumably the solicitor's fees, as you mentioned about the mortgages being increased because of the purchasing for a company vehicle, the percentage. I don't know how you found it, but the costs through the solicitors often increase because your personal guarantees and all that kind of stuff.
Personal guarantees, limited company.
All that kind of stuff.
And they love their pound of flesh.
Yeah, exactly. Probably times 5 for each mortgage as well.
Absolutely. Times 5.
We've all got to make our money.
They've only got to do one lot of searches. They've only got one lot of this, one lot of that. All the leases are identical, but they still charge you 5 times.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd rather be a solicitor.
Yeah, definitely. And that does rack up, and that is something that you would have had to have factored in when you were doing your calculation as to what you wanted to offer.
Yeah, and exactly that. So people think, oh, you've had it away there, but no, you haven't. What you've done is you've taken a business decision, you've taken a view, and that's why you need to get the discount in at the beginning. And obviously the developer's not stupid. They know that if you're taking it off their hands and you're buying all the properties all at once, then it's going to save them a lot of grief.
It's very clean for them. They could end up in a scenario where they sell 3 of them, and then you end up with 3 awkward leaseholders giving them grief as the freeholder, and they're stuck with 2, and there can be a prolonged period of time. So, probably good for both parties.
The other thing, the reason why we got the deal, of course, is because 4 of the properties came with sitting tenants.
Right. Okay.
So you get a discount because of that.
Which is unusual to some people, because if you're buying buy-to-let, it's good that you have a tenant in there, but the downside of that is that sometimes they have rights, sometimes they might not be particularly good payers, they might not be the best tenants, and they also might be at a discounted below market rate, which is what I normally find when you get a sitting tenant, or a tenant you're purchasing it with them, is that they're paying well below what the normal rent would be if you just bought it empty and rented it out.
because of COVID, they've not put the rent up for 2 or 3 years. And rents are now at a premium. However, that's also an opportunity. So I'm buying it with 4 sitting tenants. It's got 1 empty flat. You can then value that flat. We'll obviously go and get a cut of paint. You can value that flat at proper market rent. Put someone in that, and that gives you a benchmark for the rest of the flats. It just so happened that the 2-bedroom flat was becoming empty during all the negotiations. So whilst they were there, it took the best part of 6 months for everything to be sorted out. So they handed their notice in sort of 2 months before. So a week after I took the property over, it became empty. So I went in there, decorated it, made the place look nice, and then that. In fact, I think you've got photographs of that particular place.
Yeah, we've got some which we can put on the screen if we haven't already shown them.
So then we're getting full market value for that place. So now we're getting full market value for 2 of the flats. And then obviously the other ones can then be, subject to how much the people can afford, because you don't want to be a nasty landlord. You can then.
It's got to be fair.
It's got to be fair. You've got to be fair. And I'm the type of landlord that if anything needs doing, I'll do it. I don't make. If it needs a new boiler, I'll put a new boiler in. If it needs decorating, I'll decorate it. If anything goes wrong.
The kind of, if it's not acceptable for you, then you wouldn't expect someone else to live in there. And I think that's a good moral for most people.
I think
standards.
Landlords have a very bad name, and there is some awful landlords. But there's some awful people. But most landlords and most people are quite nice. So landlords aren't there to screw everyone. They're there to earn a living. It's part of my business. It's what I do. So if you're a landlord and there's the market rent, you charge fair market rent. I never charge more than what the local housing allowance. So if the local housing allowance is X, that's what I charge on rent. I don't charge Y just because I get away with it. Just because there's no flats to rent in the area. So I don't squeeze everybody. The local housing allowance, whatever it is, that's what I charge. But likewise, my view is that if I would be happy to live there, I'm happy to rent it out. If I'm not happy to live in it, then it doesn't get rented out until I put it into a state where I'm happy to live in it.
And that is, I think, a good standard for any kind of quality of quality landlord, is that if you're not willing to live there yourself, then you shouldn't expect someone else to live there. Not necessarily the area. I'm sure you probably wouldn't particularly want to live in a 1-bed flat per se. But that's different, and people get confused with that. Like, would you live there? That's not. You've got family, dogs, kids, life, and the rest of it. a one-bedroom flat's not suitable, but would you actually live in it is a different question to would you live in it?
Yes, it's not
the same, but
do I want to live in it? Not necessarily, because I'm happy in the house I live in.
Exactly.
But if I found myself in a situation where I'd have to rent, would I be happy to rent that flat? Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the trick.
And I think that's a kind of benchmark for any build out. So the bottom line that everybody always loves to talk about is the yield. Yeah. So we won't delve down into the individual figures, but obviously you've got a kind of collective rent, collective mortgage.
Yes.
We won't include agency fees and that sort of stuff, but you know, as a base yield, so you've obviously put in some capital and the rest of it. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, put in 190,000 of my own money to start with, and it returns on rent. It returns about £3,600 to £3,700 a month.
Yeah, which obviously you can tinker up as we've.
Yes, which when
at some point,
as and when that's going to increase. The rents are going to come down.
Yeah. So
that's going to increase over the next 5 years, and then the mortgage is £1,500.
Yeah.
So that gives me a flat yield of 13%.
Yeah, that's pretty good on that arrangement. Really.
And that gives you a little bit of flexibility there. So if you need to do some maintenance, if you need to do some repairs, if I decide to put it with letting agents and their costs come out of it, you've still got a healthy yield.
Yeah, even with agency fees and a few repairs, you're probably looking at a 9 to 10% yield adjusted for those things. So that's a pretty good yield on that. And obviously you've got that equity built in from day one where you've bought below market rate. Obviously we've touched on all the reasons for that, and then obviously potentially in the future you can build that other flat in the basement. So cracking deal. Shame I didn't get in.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, of course, because it's a limited company, that £190,000 that I put in of our own money in investment, that was a director's loan account. Yeah. So that can get drawn through the profits of the business tax free until it's all paid up, paid back.
Exactly.
And that's obviously why you
massive saving on in that front. Obviously you would have either equity released from another property or paid tax on it in the first place, but you're drawing it back down at a tax-free efficient rate. Obviously you'll pay corporation tax on the profits as opposed to personal rate tax, and you'll be able to claim the interest payments back on the mortgage payments. So cracking deal, I think. Well done. Shame I didn't get in there, but these things go that way.
Keep looking at right move.
I keep looking.
That's the thing, and that's the thing. The deals are there.
Yeah.
And they're there. They're there in the open.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks you've got to hunt deals and you've got to look for them and you've got to go to auctions.
Yeah.
You know, usually if they're at an auction, there's a reason they're at an auction.
You just tested the agent effectively, didn't you? So
just ask the questions. If you ask the questions, the chances are there's a deal to be had.
Yeah.
And you build relationships with agents as well.
Definitely.
And the more agents you build relationships with, and if you can prove to them that you're one, you have high integrity, two, that you're honest, and three, that you mean business, then they'll do business with you.
Brilliant. I think that you sum that up really well for getting local contacts and the rest of it. So okay, I think that we'll call it a day there. So thank you very much for your time, Norman.
No problem at all.
And don't forget to check out Norman's Sussex sign.
If you need any signs, give us a ring.
Yeah, and thank you very much for your time, and good luck with it all. And hopefully we'll get to manage it one day.
You might do. Yeah, you might do.
Cheers. Thanks.